You have heard of Zen Buddhism? Zen. The founder of Zen was a great yogi from Tanjore, actually, in Tamil Nadu, whose name was Bodhidharma. Now, Bodhidharma was the one who took this particular brand of Buddhist teaching into China. This particular brand of Buddhism laid more stress on meditation, dhyana. So he called it Dhyana Dharma. When he went to China, it became Chan. And the Chan exported to Japan in that guttural language became Zen. So this is the meaning of Zen. It's actually what we are dealing with, Dhyana. So when Bodhidharma was in China, he was living on top of a hill, and 3 young men, after not having food for many days, reached the top of the hill. It was lunchtime, mealtime. So he was holding a wooden bowl in his hand and a spoon and drinking soup. So these 3 young people went up there and prostrated before him and held up their hands and said, "Sir, we have come from so far with great difficulties to understand Zen." So Bodhidharma simply said, "I am drinking my soup." These boys waited for some time, so they again asked him, same reply. Third time when they asked him, he called his assistant and said, "Give them their soup." And while they were drinking the soup, they said, "What an idiotic thing we are doing." So they again asked him. So again he said, "I'm drinking my soup." So they got wild. So they said, "We are also drinking our soup." Bodhidharma put down his bowl and spoon and said, "No, you're not drinking your soup. You're drinking your soup and you're thinking of Zen. I'm drinking my soup, I'm drinking my soup, I'm drinking my soup. This is Zen." One-pointed attention to whatever you're doing. Now that becomes easier when you're really interested in what you're doing. Pratyahara, sense withdrawal, is the usual translation used, which means the capacity to withdraw from something and fix it to another at any given moment, instantaneously. If this is mastered, then you come to the next step called dharana in Ashtanga Yoga. Now dharana is simply the capacity developed for fixing your attention to one object or one sound or one idea to the exclusion of everything else. This is called dharana. Most people who have attained success in their lives, even physically, material world, have all applied this art of dharana, which means to give complete one-pointed attention to what you're doing, to the exclusion of any other distraction. When dharana continues for a length of time, without a break, then it turns into what we call meditation now, which is dhyana. Dhyana is the capacity to internally or externally hold something with one-pointed attention for a length of time. In fact, in its deepest state, you don't even know the time. Complete attention to the exclusion of everything else. When this happens, at its highest stage of dhyana, the most advanced state of dhyana, what happens is, you forget yourself. There is only that. If you really manage to forget yourself, you have won the game. All problems is because of me. I am the problem. When I am gone and there is only that, which is the all-pervading supreme reality, reflected in the quiet state of mind, without any vrittis. That is called samadhi.
So far, there's an interesting growing list of some of the different ways that meditation affects the body. I've been looking in particular at aging markers.
Signs of aging can be seen inside the body's cells, specifically in the tiny caps at the end of each chromosome, known as the telomeres.
Our telomeres protect our genes. Now, what happens as we age, our immune cells divide and the telomeres shorten. Those protective caps get shorter and shorter. So we want to keep those intact.
Basically, the shorter the telomeres, the faster the aging. Several studies have compared the telomeres of meditators to non-meditators.
It looks like telomere length, that measure of how our immune cells age, stabilizes more and doesn't shorten in the meditation group.
Other studies have measured telomerase, the enzyme that protects those precious telomeres.
Those studies have suggested that telomerase can go up and telomere length can be better maintained during those periods.
Electrical activity in the brain is produced as neurons communicate with each other. The synchronized signals are brain waves. When you meditate, alpha and theta waves increase, and activity in some parts of the brain decreases.
You're performing better, but your brain is exerting less energy. You're getting a decrease in neural activity. You might be able to do just as well in your job, but be exerting less mental energy. So when you get home, you're less tired. Everything we do affects the brain. So any skill we learn, anything we practice will change the way our brain is structured. So over time, if you're repeating a practice, it's going to strengthen certain connections in the brain and change the grey matter, for example, volumes of the brain.
Grey matter is the darker tissue of the brain, where most of the nerve cell bodies are. The Harvard research found that grey matter increased in key areas, such as the hippocampus, prefrontal cortex, and temporoparietal junction.
And these are parts of the brain that help us to remember, to focus, to learn, to inhibit impulses and regulate our emotions.
People who practice mindfulness show better mental health than 70% of the population on average. People with depression and anxiety have even larger gains than that.
The data shows that that reduces depressive symptoms, but the big finding is that it halves the rate of depressive relapse. For people who've had 3 or more depressive episodes, if they learn mindfulness as part of their treatment, they're half as likely to get depressed again down the track.
One of the things that many types of meditation do is exercise our attention muscle. And boy, that's an important muscle.
This so-called attention muscle may exert some control over one of the brain areas tied up with emotion, the amygdala.
When the amygdala gets activated, that's when we feel fear and anxiety and that sort of thing. So its purpose is to give experience an emotional salience. In something like depression or anxiety, it becomes overactive, and so it's constantly activated and providing that sensation of anxiety or fear or hypervigilance.
After meditation, other parts of the brain appear more in control of the amygdala.
What happens is when you've practiced a lot of mindfulness, both the prefrontal cortex and the hippocampus, those regions exert more regulation on the amygdala and dampen the effect of that anxiety or fear coming up.
One of the things we've found that I think is very intriguing with the effects of meditation is the changes that we talked about with expression of cytokine genes in the tissue. Ultimately, a lot of the different ways in which psychological states are translated into physical states in the body have to do with whether genes in our cells are either being turned on or expressed more, or being turned off or decreased in their expression. In the studies that we did in people who were overweight, looking at what was happening in the fat tissue when they added meditation to the kind of diet and exercise program that they were getting, was that we found that some of the genes that are involved in inflammatory responses that may have a whole set of ill effects on their health, those genes were being expressed less in the group that was getting meditation compared to the group that was just getting the standard diet and exercise. So this was, to me, a very exciting finding showing potentially connections between what people were doing with a meditation practice and what was happening actually in the tissues, in the fat cells, in the expression of these genes involved in inflammatory responses.
Well, I think the benefit of meditation is, of course, fundamentally to make you a better human being. Meditation is not just a hobby. It's something that's going to change the very way you experience every moment of your life.